I left this up here. I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. Good evening. And on behalf of myself and the presenters to come, thank you all for turning out. Although you make us a little more nervous than anything else, your presence here is greatly appreciated, so thank you again. My name is Grayson Sussman-Squires, and for the past 6 or 7 or 8 months, I have explored the topic and field of photojournalism. I can remember quite vividly, like it was yesterday, the moment I decided I wanted to pursue photojournalism. In August, I had the life-changing opportunity to travel to the People's Republic of China with some of my best friends in the class. And we were in rural Zhejiang province, which is southeast China, in this beautiful, small mountain town. We were driving, and John, who was in my class, and he's an international student from China, driving in his cousin's pickup truck. And I was sitting in the back of the truck where there are no seats or seat belts or whatever. And Chinese drivers in China they know what they're doing, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous, and in rural China, very much so. So cousin, as we called him, John's cousin, was driving this truck, and we were sitting in the back, Matt and I was holding on for dear life. And Matt had his camera up to his eye, and he was scoping out this shot. And I don't know if he actually took this picture, but there was this elderly Chinese gentleman on a moped speeding behind our pickup truck, and it was just the most iconic photo I've ever seen. And to this day, I have no idea if Matt took it. I've never seen the photo. I actually don't think he did take it.
I have it.
You did take it? You just validated my project, man. So in that moment, I was like, that's what photojournalism is. Capturing a moment that's part of a grander story. And preserving that moment in such a way that words don't even come close to describing it. They can augment it in the form of captions, but they can't do what that photograph does, which is preserve and amber a moment. And that's really what I wanted to do. Now, did I succeed in doing that? No, I didn't. I'm just come out and say it from the get-go. But I did try, and that's really all I can do as an 18-year-old amateur photographer who had never really picked up a camera before September. So in this presentation, I will show you what I've done in this project, and afterwards you can tell me what you've done. So what is photojournalism? It's kind of a broad term, and in its most basic and stripped down sense, photojournalism is the art of capturing journalistic stories or events or moments in history with a camera. The journalism comes in really in how one presents those photos. So there are varying degrees of journalism, varying degrees of photography, but what connects all of photojournalism is this common thread of events and moments and people and places and conditions being documented truthfully, artfully, and journalistically with that camera. Now, photojournalism doesn't really end with, newspaper photographers or those press conference shutterstorms, or even with war correspondence. There's a lot of empty, nuanced space in there that can be filled in photojournalism. It allows a lot of space and breadth in those photos. But most importantly, like any type of photography, it is really about capturing a moment. And that's what allows photojournalism to succeed where other types of journalism don't really. Now, a lot of photojournalists augment their photos with captions, and I'm sure you've seen that. Photojournalism has really been helped along by the digital age, but also hurt in some ways that I'll get into later. But when I first started this project and I looked around to find out how photojournalism really was presented, I was kind of disappointed to find there was no kind of uniform approach. At first I was like, well, how the heck do I start if there's no way of doing this that everybody follows? But then I realized it gave me a lot of independence to learn an art or a topic and make it my own. So in my photojournalism, I relied a lot more heavily on the written word. So I did take a ton of photos, but I also wrote a lot in this project. I felt that basically if I could take a good photograph and capture a moment as best I could, I really felt it did more justice to write about the stories I was trying to tell, because I just had a lot more experience with written journalism and also with written language rather than photography. So I ended up creating a blog where I put all my photos, but I also wrote usually a written account of the story I was trying to tell. So some stories are about moments and actions, And I took a lot of stories, I did a lot of stories on those protests, but some stories are different. They're kind of not current events, but they're ideas and they're intangible. And in those stories, I really required a lot of research to write about them and flesh them out. As for my technical training, I'm almost entirely self-taught. I got a lot of technical advice from Matt, but also from my mentor and other photographers. And I did take that into account, but when it came time to actually picking up a camera and learning how to use it, I was on my own. I decided I wanted to figure it out through trial and error. That may have been a mistake, quite frankly, but you can kind of see that in the evolution of my photography. It starts out on a very amateur level, and then it kind of gets better as my technical prowess improved. Selecting stories was by far my favorite part of the photojournalism. As an independent journalist, although albeit amateur, I feel very strongly about keeping the essence of the story and telling it as honestly as possible. At the same time, I also believe that if something is demonstrably untrue or wrong, I can come out and say it. I can just follow the facts, even if the facts are partisan or in nature, or they pick one side over the other as winners and losers. If something is demonstrably true, I did not feel any kind of obligation to present a differing opinion if that opinion was not grounded in fact. So I'll use climate change for an example. I did 2 stories on climate change, one on rising sea levels due to climate change in South Carolina, and the other is a 2-part series. The second part on rising sea levels in Louisiana. Now in that story, I found it quite difficult for some reason to photograph melting ice sheets in Louisiana. So I couldn't base evidence for climate change on photography. I had to research it, and in my written account, prove or present evidence that such things are occurring. So I went on the internet like any good millennial or teenager. I typed in, is climate change real? And went to NASA and NOAA, and I found documentable science that proved that climate change is in fact happening. So in that story, I presented the facts as they occur scientifically, but I did not present the, fact that some people are of the opinion that climate change isn't real, but they can't really prove that with any facts. The truth has kind of gone through the mill recently, and coincidentally, it was when I was just learning about journalism. So I have seen what has been going on with the concept of truth. At the same time, I was learning what journalistic ethic and what journalism really means. So as I saw all this kind of topsy-turvy truth nonsense going on in the media and in the current administration, I decided, well, if something is demonstrably true, I'll say it. If it's demonstrably untrue, I'll say that too, and I don't really care if it picks sides. Photographs present a very interesting kind of way to look at truth, because a photograph, somebody can pick that up and say, well, there's a photograph of something. That's as demonstrably true as you'll ever get without actually seeing something with your own eyes. But in my photojournalism research, I came across this picture of Stalin, and he's surrounded by some people and during some event in the USSR. And in my research into that photo, I came across water, airbrushing people out of photographs. So I kind of got scared. I was like, wait, photographs, people assume that is a true documentation of something that's ongoing or some account of something. Some account of something. But those photographs are just as susceptible to changing the truthfulness that they present as any kind of written word or any other kind of journalism. So with that backdrop of truth, I kind of dove into photojournalism. I had no idea where I was going to start. I had no real idea how to use the camera, but luckily is a word I'll refrain from using, but on November 9th, I woke up with a story that had to be told. But how can you talk about or tell the story of an election upset through photographs? And I struggled with that, because I really wanted to tell the story of the election through photography. Luckily, on the night of November 9th, it became clear in cities across the U.S. These big protests erupted after the results of the Electoral College. So I was like, well, that's a story. So my first story I covered was about the protests in Manhattan after the election in a series, a three-part series called Trump's America, Our Streets. I'll show the first body of that work in a moment. After that, I kind of continued with protest photography as I really liked it. I thought there was a lot of stuff going on. I could really sink my teeth into it and find beautiful photos of people in the crowd, which maybe I got a lot of, but that's between you and me. So I went to these 3 protests in November, and then after that I was like, well, there's this women's march coming up. I'll go photograph that. That'll be great. So I booked a ticket on the Greyhound for the women's march, and then I was like, wait a minute. It's happening the day after some other big event, the inauguration. So I got a ticket for the day before. On Thursday, I left school early Thursday, went down to DC, stayed with some lovely people who lent me their couch, got up really early with no ticket to the inauguration, just kind of walked up to the barricades where all the National Guards guys were. I was like, how can I get a ticket? And they're like, we need to do that a while ago. And some lady came up to me and was like, I have an extra ticket. Great place, great view of everything. I went, I took photos of the inauguration. I talked to a lot of people. I went to the parades. That was an interesting experience of leaving my bubble behind and going into a totally separate bubble of 150,000 very pumped up Trump supporters and just little me in the middle with my camera. What are you doing here? Oh, school project. How are you? Like, I'm great, Trump won. I was like, cool. I kind of led off with like, I have different political views from my parents, and they're like, great, welcome. And then by the end of it, they're like, we know you're a liberal. Okay, whatever, I tried. After that, after those 2 big stories in January and February, over the February break, I had the opportunity to travel south. I went to South Carolina and Louisiana. And in South Carolina, I did a story on rising sea levels in Edisto Island, South Carolina, which is 40 miles south of Charleston. In that story, I had to explore photography and photojournalism, not so much with people, which was the main subject of my first stories, but with places and with intangible ideas that weren't so superficial. You couldn't sink your teeth into a photograph of well, you'll see that story in a little, so I won't spoil it. Then I also did a story on rural poverty in the South, and a story that I will continue. It's a series I'll continue. I've been trying to work on this story about rural poverty in upstate New York for a long time, and I'm just kind of getting into that now, so I'll continue that after the project. I also did a story on jazz in New Orleans, because I felt photojournalism didn't always have to be about newsworthy things or headline kind of things. It could be about ideas or musical genres, and it could tell the story of that genre in an interesting journalistic way. I've moved on, and I've continued with some of those stories, especially the rural poverty stories, and I uploaded those to my blog. And after the presentation of 2 stories, outside in the atrium, after the whole presentations are done, there will be some photographs on display. You can take a look. Those will be from 3 stories. In the City of Jazz, which is about jazz in New Orleans. The Pussy Hat Occupation, which is about the Women's March on Washington. And the 3rd story out there is Mr. Trump went to Washington, so did I. And that's about the inauguration. Up in the booth, we'll take the projector for 500. So this is the first story I covered. On November 12th, I went to Columbus Circle, to the Trump International Hotel and Resort, where I found a whole bunch of angry people. Uh-oh.
Is it on?
It is on. This was the great nightmare. You want to just do it? Yeah. Okay. So I got to Columbus Circle at 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, and I found basically the north end of the north curve of the circle kind of crowded with these people, and I had come to this protest with no real idea of who was there or what they were doing. And I discovered the group that had organized the protest was a group called Se Hace Camino Nueva York, which was Make the Road New York, which is a Latino immigrants' rights group. And they had organized this protest the Saturday after the election. In this photograph, a young man, a young Latino man, presents his argument why he thinks Donald Trump is wrong. In this photograph, you can see it wasn't just Latino people protesting for their basic human rights, but also young people protesting for their clean and open future, but also a future that builds bridges, not walls. This lady, I kind of was walking. By the time the protest really got underway, there were so many people from all different groups, not just immigrants' rights groups, but the LGBT community, the Muslim community in New York, but also a ton of young people. By the time they all kind of came to Columbus Circle, the crowd was so big, the NYPD diverted us down 59th Street, walking east along the park, and this woman kind of just stepped back out of the kind of flow of all these people marching and protesting and chanting, and she just watched for a while. As I said earlier, most of the people there at the beginning were from this Latino immigrant rights group, but the crowd diversified very quickly. And then at 5th Avenue, when we walked east on 59th Street, we turned right going down 5th Avenue towards the other Trump Tower, which is at 5th and 57th, I believe. We didn't get there again. We were diverted on 58th Street to complete the circle going back to Columbus Circle. The NYPD was very respectful and responsible. They set up a cordon basically around 10,000 marching people, which, as you can imagine, is not an easy task. But they made a perimeter, and some people in Midtown were not too pleased. This mother and her child were kind of inconvenienced and had to go around. There are some bad words in this slideshow. Don't use them. My mother didn't teach me well. There were a lot of young people, especially from the LGBT community. They made their message also very clear. This guy had been marching with us from the beginning, and I had seen him throughout the day and got separated. A lot of people, over 10,000 people by the end of the protest. And as I was walking up, I can't remember what street, but I was walking up towards Columbus, on what avenue, I saw this guy again. And on the street by the curb was all this ice and glass. And this guy was just sitting there with all these people in the street marching, and then all these people who were very inconvenienced by the people on the street, angrily walking on the sidewalk, frowning at them, and this guy kind of caught in the middle with this glass and ice all around him. As the protest moved from Columbus Circle towards the second Trump Tower, a large group of Muslim Americans and Muslim New Yorkers came from a local mosque. I'd estimate somewhere between 250 and 400. And they kind of came out of nowhere, but to great happiness and delight by the rest of the protesters. And they kind of got in front and started chanting. And this lady just joined the protest, started chanting, and had no idea what was behind her until she looked behind and saw 10,000 people all kind of yelling, "Yeah, you're right." And I guess she felt pretty good about that. We'll move on to the second story. I traveled to Edisto Island with my family, a place I discovered when I was 12 and was really into finding plantation homes that I would buy when I was rich, I guess. Which, if I continue being a journalist, will be never. So Edisto Island is this island south of Charleston. It was well known as a plantation island, and through much of the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries was really used as a place for agriculture. But as time moved on and agriculture kind of fell away from this area, the main economic lifeline for this area was tourism. and Edisto Beach became the real place where people from Charleston could go easily and vacation. So this place has still has a plantation called the Seabrook Plantation that's for sale for about $10 million if anybody's interested. But it also has a median income of permanent residents of $25,000. So it's really a pretty poor place with 21% of people living below the poverty line. So when I went there and discovered that in September and October, 2 hurricanes had come and basically wiped out 900,000 cubic yards of sand from the beaches of Edisto Beach and had left Edisto Beach in not a great shape. I was really kind of surprised to see that this was the only thing this town had going for it, and the only thing that this island had going for it. So we drove through Edisto Beach, which is a one-road town basically, and came back up it. And in our little drive, we're like, wow, this place is not in great shape. What happened here? Like, wow, I thought Edisto Island would be this place with all these giant plantation homes. Then I discovered what had happened and went down to the other end of the beach and discovered all this work on the beach. What had happened after these 900,000 cubic yards of sand had been washed away by these 2 hurricanes, Hurricane Hermine and Hurricane Matthew, was that the state had a $17 million project to replenish these beaches and build these new, I think they're called groins or something like that, which are basically skinny jetties that hold the sand in place on the beach so it's not washed away so easily. So I got to this place, found out that they were doing all this work. There was this big ship out off to sea. It was dredging up all the sand from the bottom of the ocean, and it was pumping it up to the beach through piping, and then down this long pipe, 3 miles long, that ran along the beach, parallel to the beach, upon the beach. And at the end of this pipe, it blew out this kind of gross, sandy, watery mix that looked like crude oil. And for a minute, I was like, why are they dumping oil into the ocean? And I found out what it was. Thought I was an idiot, but that's beside the point as well. The leading cause of property damage by 2050 will be damage caused by intense storms on coastal areas that are produced by the warming of the of the oceans. That warming of the sea temperature leads to larger and more aggressive and intense storms. So by 2050, it won't be wildfires out west that will be doing most of the property damage in this country. There'll be sea level rise and more destructive storms from the sea. I thought this was pretty weird, but as I did research afterwards on the $17 million project, I found that the project manager and town officials of Edisto Beach asked that nobody watch the work, that it would be distracting and it might be unsafe. And this is a town of 400 and 500 people who live there year-round, and they have this big project that comes out of nowhere, and it's going on day in, day out, at night, crews are there all the time, and they didn't want anybody to watch. I was like, how is anybody going to sleep? Of course they're going to watch. This is going on all night. There wasn't much of a surprise that most of the townspeople were just kind of out there on the beach watching this work go on. By 2100, if sea level rise isn't dashed by ambitious cuts to human emissions, 85 to 90% of Edisto Island will be underwater. And that's from 2 meters, or about 6 feet, a little over 6 feet of sea level rise. That's 90% of everything those people have, and a whole lot else. Miami, a lot of different cities are under tremendous strain from sea level rise. However, the thought process for people in power usually goes like this. Well, there's a hurricane that washed away 900,000 cubic yards of sand, and it's going to end up swallowing this island. Well, let's replenish the beaches. That's not going to really cut it long term. Unless you really go to the root cause, climate change, you can't really fix this problem. You can replenish the beaches till the cows come home, but that doesn't really stop the water rising. Basically, it's a lot of people's lives that are at risk, yeah, but it's mostly their livelihood in places they've lived for a long time. And for a place like Edisto Island, it's primarily poor. It primarily has one kind of thing going for it, which is people like the beaches there. There's nothing really there to catch them if they fall. I have some thank yous, as we usually do. First off, I'd like to thank my mentor, Ed Keating. Although we didn't really do much hands-on work together, his advice in what photojournalism is and how to do it, which was kind of like, just don't do it. It was greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank Ms. Monteleone for her help and constant support. Also my in-school mentor, Ms. Lee, helping me with the speech, choosing the photos for the slide, which story she liked best. Thank you endlessly for your help. Mr. Davis, Ms. Radefeld, our class mentor, our class advisors, thank you very much for all your help and support. To my class, I can't believe we're almost done. It's been kind of very short for me, but I love you guys, and I'm going to be sad to go. To my family, Mom, thank you for staying up very late, putting together the display boards after I quit. I'm not good at cutting paper, okay? Dad and Mom, thank you for everything, especially when I had to, get a camera. Thank you for that. That was nice. And Mom, thanks when I didn't have a camera for letting me use yours, which I know you weren't happy about. To my siblings, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. And afterwards, you can find some of my photographs on display outside. Thank you.